Do the trashy pulp novels of the world have anything to offer? Are bestsellers all they're cracked up to be? Here at Terrible Book Club, we explore whether you really can judge a book by its cover, or its ridiculous synopsis. You ever passed a book and thought, ugh, who's reading this? We probably are.
Hi, I'm Ken.
And I'm Dee.
And this is Chris.
Hello.
And Paris.
Hello.
Once again, combining forces to bring you more Carnacki. Now, I know what you're thinking. We've already read all the Carnacki there is to nack. Not true. While we did discuss The Horse of the Invisible in our very first ever Carnacki episode, we did not read it on air. We read it separately, had to contend with it each alone, and then come together in a support group to process what the fuck just happened to us.
Yes, and in that episode from April of 2020, we promised that we would read this for you. We forgot until 5 years later. But we're here now. And there is no statute of limitations on podcast promises, as Chris pointed out to me earlier today. So we are fulfilling our promise, our oath to you listeners. 5 years late, but fulfilling it still.
You're signing me up for a lot of stuff that I don't feel like I have to be obligated to actually do.
All right. Well, Ken, would you like to tell the good folks at home how we normally do this, since it's been a while since we have nacked, and folks may have forgotten?
Absolutely. We will be reading this round robin, which means we take a turn reading until we either fuck up or crack up, and it passes to the next reader. And heckling is strongly encouraged.
Fantastic. We still don't remember who went first last time. We never remember. So
That's not even, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry.
Who went first 5 years ago, you know?
yeah, I re-listened to the episode because I could not remember actually doing that episode. I mean, it was April of 2020. That whole time period is just lost to the past. It was actually really funny and a good time. So I don't know if we can live up to that episode, but we're gonna do our best.
Guys, I think this podcast might be good.
Yeah, I think it might be good.
Hey guys, at the end of this, if it wasn't good, go listen to that first episode.
From 5 years ago.
From 5 years ago.
This is us going back to our roots. This is Carnacki Origins, is what this is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
All right, I will begin reading The Horse of the Invisible. I almost said by Thomas Carnacki, which is not the author.
Not him. Not even in the fiction is he the author.
By William H. Hodgson?
William Hope Hodgson.
Sure, you got it. That's good enough.
Hope Hodgson. Yeah, William Hope Hodgson. All right.
William Hope Hodgson.
All right, off I go.
Away!
I had that afternoon received an invitation from Carnacki. When I reached his place, I found him sitting alone. As I came into the room, he rose with a perceptibly stiff movement and extended his left hand. His face seemed to be badly scarred and bruised, and his right hand was bandaged. He shook hands and offered me his paper, which I refused. Then he passed me a handful of photographs and returned to his reading.
This is my hog. Check it out.
Very fucking normal interaction with your friend. You walk in and his body is destroyed and he's just like silently hands you some fucking Polaroids and leaves you alone.
Yep, totally normal interaction. Not a word had come from him and not a question from me. He would tell us all about it later. I spent about half an hour looking at the photographs, which were chiefly snaps, some by flashlight, of an extraordinarily pretty girl. Though in some of the photographs it was wonderful that her prettiness was so evident, for so frightened and startled was her expression that it was difficult not to believe that she'd been photographed in the presence of some imminent and overwhelming danger.
Carnacki just handing you like, here are my murder pictures because I murdered this person.
Right?
Here are my fucking creep shots.
Here's my ghost porn. Is it cool? I thought it was cool. Anyway.
Not even. This is just like a woman he has trapped in his basement.
Yeah.
That's why she looks so fucking terrified all the time.
This is literally, he's been handed photos of a terrified woman is what happened when he walked into Carnacki's house.
And he's like, what a cool normal day I'm having. Thanks, Carnacki.
And Carnacki is like burnt and bruised, so like...
His first reaction is, man, she's hot.
Yep, sounds about right. The bulk of the photographs were of interiors of different rooms and passages, and in every one, the girl might be seen, either full length in the distance or closer, with perhaps little more than a hand or arm or portion of the head or dress included in the photograph.
Oh, so he was chasing her. Great.
All of these had evidently been taken with some definite aim that did not have for its first purpose the picturing of the girl, but obviously of her surroundings, and they made me very curious, as you can imagine. And very hard. Near the bottom of the pile, however, I came upon something definitely extraordinary.
She had her tits out.
It was a photograph of the girl standing abrupt and clear with her tits out in the great blaze of the flashlight, and was plain to be seen. Her face was turned a little upward as if she had been frightened suddenly by some noise. Directly above her, as though half-formed and coming down out of the shadows, was the shape of a single enormous hoof and dong. I examined this photograph for a long time without understanding it more than that it had probably to do with some queer case in which Carnacki was interested. When Jessup, Arkwright, and Taylor came in, Carnacki quietly held out his hand for the photographs, which I returned in the same spirit, and afterward we all went in to dinner. When he had spent a quiet hour at the table, we pulled our chairs round and made ourselves snug, and Carnacki began.
I would not continue to come to dinner if every time I showed up he handed me creep shots of a woman he'd murdered and then made me sit silently through dinner
Yeah, he does not sound like a good friend, but you have to think, there's no podcast, as you pointed out in the original episode, D, this was the first podcast, right? There's no TV, there's no, there's not really a whole lot of entertainment, and this is what they had for podcasts, so,
Imagine if you had to go to Ken and Dee's houses to listen to Antiques Freaks.
Terrible.
You physically have to travel.
I mean, that'd be kind of great, actually.
Wretched.
we do have cats, so.
Yeah, it's pretty good, I'd say.
This feels like Hannibal with none of the charisma.
Shitty Hannibal.
Yeah.
I've been up north. Shit, there's no up in there. It's just north. All right, I've already fucked up somebody else.
You added a word.
Old English, Paris. They don't go up anywhere until, I don't know, the 20th century.
Make up a voice.
No,
to say.
yeah.
Dino,
Don't mind if I do.
Dino.
I go.
What's Carnacki's voice is the question.
No.
I've been up north.
There's no up. There's no
God
up.
damn it.
D, that's...
All right, Chris.
Chris,
can you clear this hurdle that has laid us low?
Okay. My God, I feel like you tripped over that on purpose to set me up, but all right.
I did not.
I've been north, he said, speaking slowly and painfully between puffs at his pipe. Up to Hisgins of East Lancashire. It has been a pretty strange business all around, as I fancy you chaps will think, when I have finished, I knew before I went something about the horse story, as I have heard it called. But I never thought of it coming my way somehow. Also, I know now that I never considered it seriously, in spite of my rule always to keep an open mind. Funny creatures, we humans.
They called it My Little Pony, and I didn't think much of it.
Dear Penthouse, I never thought it would happen to me. The horse story.
Well, I got a wire asking for an appointment, which of course told me that there was some trouble. On the date, I fixed old Captain Hisgins himself came up to see me. He told me a great many new details about the horse story, though naturally, I had always known the main points and understood that if the first child were a girl, that girl would be haunted by the horse during her courtship.
I'm sorry.
Obviously.
What?
Oh, okay, hey, you just jumping right... As you guys all know, as we all are aware, the horse will haunt the woman.
We all know the horse story. I'm not gonna go over it again, okay?
I mean, it's so obvious. A girl who is getting courted, she gets haunted by a horse. It's just what happens.
It is, as you can see already, an extraordinary story, and though I have always known about it, I've always known don't say that I've never known...
You have always known.
The horse story, okay? Don't ask me... you don't have to ask me any details.
Don't fuck around. I know the horse story.
I have never thought it to be anything more than an old-time legend, as I have already hinted. You see, for 7 generations, the Hisgins family have had children for their firstborn, and even the Hisginses themselves have long considered the tale to be little more than a myth. To come to the present, the eldest child of the reigning family is a girl, and she has been often teased and warned in jest by her friends and relations that she is the first girl to be the eldest for 7 generations, and that she would have to keep her men friends at arm's length or go into a nunnery if she hoped to escape the haunting. And this, I think, shows us how thoroughly the tale had grown to be considered as nothing worthy of the least serious thought. Don't you think so?
So this story is relating to a single family, and we are all supposed to know it somehow, inherently.
Yes.
Listen, if you don't know the Hisgins horse story, then you're nobody, all right?
And also, on top of that, the Hisgins also don't believe the story.
2 months ago, Miss Hisgins became engaged to Beaumont, a young naval officer, and on the evening of the very day of the engagement, before it was even formally announced, a most extraordinary thing happened, which resulted in Captain Hisgins making the appointment and my ultimately going down to their place to look into the thing. From the old family records and papers that were entrusted to me, I found that there could be no possible doubt that prior to something like 150 years ago, there were some very extraordinary and disagreeable coincidences, to put the thing in the least emotional way.
That's a very funny thing to say.
In the whole of the 2 centuries prior to that date, there were 5 firstborn girls out of a total of 7 generations of the family. Each of these girls grew up to maidenhood and each became engaged, and each one died during the period of engagement. 2 by suicide, 1 by falling from a window, 1 from a broken heart, presumably heart failure owing to sudden shock through fright. The 5th girl was killed one evening in the park around the house. But just how, there seemed to be no exact knowledge, only that there was an impression that she had been kicked by a horse.
Just an impression? Was there literally a hoof mark in her head? Like, what's...
Wait, okay, a hoof impression. All right, there's something very interesting here that the horse is killing them, but for 2 of them, the horse just seems to have, like, a horse that makes you kill yourself.
Yeah.
It's a bully horse, really.
That is interesting.
Horse just comes out of the side hallway as a ghost and is like, you're worthless, you're nothing. There's no point. She was dead when found. Now, you see, all of these deaths might be attributed in a way, even the suicides, to natural causes. I mean, as distinct from supernatural. You see?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, yes, generally.
Yet, in every case, the maidens had undoubtedly suffered some extraordinary and terrifying experiences during their various courtships, for in all of the records there was mention either of the neighing of an unseen horse, or of the sounds of an invisible horse galloping, as well as many other peculiar and quite inexplicable manifestations. You begin to understand now, I think, just how extraordinary a business it was that I was asked to look into.
You know, I gotta say, of all the, like, stupid Carnacki shit, like, this one's pretty unique. Like, what an absurd idea. I gotta say, I'll give it to him for that, because, like, haunted horse murders firstborn girls because the horse wants to marry her instead. I don't know why the horse cares that she's getting married.
I don't know where you're pulling that the horse wants to marry them.
Horse jealousy.
I gathered from one account that the haunting of the girls was so constant and horrible that 2 of the girls' lovers fairly ran away from their ladyloves. And I think it was this, more than anything else, that made me feel that there had been something more in it than a mere succession of uncomfortable coincidences.
Yeah, dude, if all the women in a family kept killing themselves during engagements for 5 generations, yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence. Like, whoa.
By the time the 3rd one went flying out of a window, I'm not gonna look down and be like, that's a weird coincidence.
A coincidence that she was near the window.
Yeah, some weird coincidences.
I got hold of these facts before I had been many hours in the house, and after this, I went pretty carefully into the details of the thing that happened on the night of Miss Hisgins' engagement to Beaumont. It seems that as the 2 of them were going through the big lower corridor just after dusk and before the lamps had been lighted, there had been a sudden, horrible neighing in the corridor close to them. Immediately afterward, Beaumont received a tremendous blow or kick, which broke his right forearm. Then the rest of the family and the servants came running to know what was wrong. Lights were brought in the corridor, and afterward the whole house searched, but nothing unusual was found. You can imagine the excitement in the house, and the half-incredulous, half-believing talk about the old legend. Then later in the middle of the night...
Yay, the horse kicked a man! Woo! Party time!
Then later in the middle of the night, the old captain was waked by the sound of a great horse galloping round and round the house. Several times after this, both Beaumont and the girls said that they had heard the sounds of hoofs near them after dusk in several of the rooms and corridors. 3 nights later, Beaumont was waked by a strange neighing in the nighttime, seeming to come from the direction of his sweetheart's bedroom. He ran hurriedly for her father, and the two of them raced to her room. They found her awake and ill with sheer terror, having been awakened by the neighing, seemingly close to her bed.
You know, I thought there was a horse in my room isn't like the terror that I was thinking.
Yeah, it doesn't seem that bad.
Like, I'd be confused.
Right, yeah.
But I wouldn't be, like, shitting my pants with fear.
Yeah, I'd be more like, well, that's fucking weird. I better turn my light on and check it out, but not like...
I'd be like, I'm on the second floor. How'd this horse get in?
Yeah, really. Not like sweating and shitting myself. It seems a little much.
The night before I arrived, there had been a fresh happening, and they were all in a frightfully nervy state, as you can imagine. I spent most of the first day, as I have hinted, in getting hold of details, but after dinner I slacked off and played billiards all the evening with Beaumont and Miss Hisgins. We stopped about 10 o'clock and had coffee, and I got Beaumont to give me full particulars about the thing that had happened the evening before.
10 p.m. coffee, that is... wow, alright.
That's, like, yeah, we did some snuff and some cocaine, and...
Yeah, I mean, I suspect it's not decaf, right? So, I don't think that technology had been invented, but at this point.
No.
He and Miss Hisgins had been sitting quietly in her aunt's boudoir, whilst the old lady chaperoned them behind a book.
Oh man, dating. Ooh, yeah.
Oh boy.
It was growing dusk and the lamp was at her end of the table. The rest of the house was not yet lit as the evening had come earlier than usual. Well, it seems that the door into the hall was open and suddenly the girl said, "Hush! What's that?" They both listened and then Beaumont heard it, the sound of a horse outside of the front door. "Your father?" he suggested.
Okay. Yeah, that's 100% my dad.
But she reminded him that her father was not riding and also not a horse.
Yeah.
And also not indoors with the horse. This guy, this motherfucker, she's got to break up with him because this guy heard a horse neighing and he was like, "Yo, is that your dad?"
Delightful.
Is that your dad out there?
Of course, they were both ready to feel queer, as you can suppose.
Sure.
As I've been there before.
But Beaumont made an effort to shake this off and went into the hall to see whether anyone was at the entrance. It was pretty dark in the hall, and he could see the glass panels of the inner draft door clear-cut in the darkness of the hall. He walked over to the glass and looked through into the drive beyond, but there nothing in sight. That's really, it said, "but there nothing in sight." Okay, I'm just making sure I didn't.
But there nothing in sight.
But there nothing in sight, yeah.
Okay.
That is correct.
Yeah, you're correct. No worries.
He felt nervous and puzzled and opened the inner door and went out onto the carriage circle. Almost directly afterward, the great hall door swung to with a crash behind him. He told me that he had a sudden awful feeling of having been trapped in some way. That is how he put it. He whirled round and gripped the door handle, but something seemed to be holding it with a vast grip on the other side.
Fucking horse. Oh, horse locked you out of your house.
You know, horses, they got those strong grips. Strong horse grips.
Horse locked you. You stupid bitch. You got locked out of your house by a horse. It's got his little teeth on the handle.
Then, before he could be fixed in his mind that this was so, he was able to turn the handle and open the door, because it was just open and he was stupid.
Because he's an idiot. And horses can't hold doors.
It was a push, not a pull.
He paused a moment in the doorway and peered into the hall, for he had hardly studied his mind sufficiently to know whether he was really frightened or not.
Yeah, I've always had that problem. Am I scared or hungry?
Then he heard his sweetheart blow him a kiss out of the grayness of the big unlit hall, and he knew that she had followed him from the boudoir.
What?
He blew her a kiss back and stepped inside the doorway, meaning to go to her.
How could you hear a blown kiss?
Yeah, what was she? Was she like making cartoon like smack? What the fuck?
Mwah!
Very hard.
Yeah, I don't understand that. It's strange.
She's actually just screaming like, "Kiss! Kiss!"
Blow, kiss. And then suddenly, in a flash of sickening knowledge, he knew that it was not his sweetheart who had blown him that kiss.
It was the fucking horse! God damn it! It's that fucking horse got him again!
That fucking horse is cribbing and he thinks his girlfriend's blowing him a kiss.
It's horrible.
So, okay, hang on a second. my internet, like, fucked up, and Chris, for some reason, was just slowly saying, like, was not his sweetheart who had blown him. And then it just got stuck with that. It's like dying over here.
Oh, fuck, that's good.
Just and Chris's video.
It's the internet trying to make the joke for me,
Yeah,
really.
Oh, no. Oh, shit.
He knew that something was trying to tempt him alone into the darkness.
To blow him.
And that the girl had never left the boudoir.
It's the horse.
He jumped back, and in the same instant of time, he heard the kiss again, nearer to him.
It's a horny-ass ghost.
He called out at the top of his voice, "Mary, stay in the boudoir. Don't move out of the boudoir until I come to you." He heard her call something in reply from the boudoir, and then he had struck a clump. Crap. Oh, that's blindness
Struck
getting
a crap. All right,
Oh.
Ken, it's up to you.
He struck a crap.
Good.
All right, Ken, talk about how this horse is trying to seduce this man.
He heard her call something in reply from the boudoir, and then he had struck a clump of a dozen or so matches and was holding them above his head and looking round the hall. There was no one in it, but even as the matches burned out, there came the sound of a great horse galloping down the empty drive. Sorry, a clump of a dozen or so matches he is lighting at once to see by.
That seems unnecessary, but he is afraid that a horse is trying to kiss him, so...
You make a compelling point.
Like, have you ever been, like sexually harassed by a horse?
And not had matches with you, it's actually a big help.
Yeah, it's huge help to have a lot of matches.
They're afraid of fire, so, like, they'll back off. You have enough fire.
That's like a full book of matches that he's just striking all at once.
Honestly, kind of skillful. I gotta say, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah.
Unless he's doing them like rapid fire, like he can do like the fan the revolver move of like rip the match out and like strike it.
Honestly, yeah, that's cool as fuck.
Well, it says that he struck a clump of a dozen or so, so he's just, it's just like a fistful of matches that he's just slapping against the wall until it lights.
Kind of sick, visually.
Now you see, both he and the girl had heard the sounds of the horse galloping, but when I questioned more closely, I found that the aunt had heard nothing. Though it is true she is a bit deaf and she was further back in the room. Obviously she's in the cahoots with the horse.
Right, naturally.
Of course, both he and Miss Hiskins had been in an extremely nervous state and ready to hear anything. The door might have been slammed by a sudden puff of wind owing to some inner door being opened, and as for the grip on the handle, that may have been nothing more than the snick catching. With regard to the kisses and the sounds of the horse galloping, I pointed out that these might have seemed ordinary enough sounds if they had been only cool enough to reason.
You're too cringe to figure this out, guys. I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
clearly...
honestly...
I don't know about you, but like in my house, it always sounds like someone's kissing and that there's a horse galloping around.
Yeah, come on, guys.
Yeah, I don't know, you guys are just walking around like, oh, the horse is trying to kiss me.
That could be because of the specific type of ASMR I used to go to bed, but you know, it seems normal enough to me.
It's just the house settling.
For you. It's settling for you.
As I told him, and as he knew, the sounds of a horse galloping carry a long way on the wind, so that what he had heard might have been nothing more than a horse being ridden some distance away. And as for the kiss, plenty of quiet noises, the rustle of a paper or a leaf, have a somewhat similar sound.
I don't think they do.
Especially if one is in an overstrung condition and imagining things.
Nope.
Yes, paper and lips definitely sound the same. I think Carnacki really needs some chapstick.
Yeah, he's really gotta get some.
Yeah, sometimes people like, I'm making out with my boyfriend, and it's like, is a tree moving somewhere?
The thing about the British is that they are not known for their lips.
Oh, I see.
realized.
Oh, wow.
They lacked their lips.
So was that like an own goal by Carnacki? Like he was just like, fuck my people.
I think it's just he hasn't encountered people who have lips.
I see.
Ah.
I see.
So he thinks, oh, this is normal, and all kisses sound like this.
It's me kissing.
All kisses sound like dry twigs snapping.
Get a hand. Kissing.
I finished preaching this little sermon on common sense versus hysteria as we put out the lights and left the billiard room, but neither Beaumont nor Miss Hiskins would agree that there had been any fancy on their parts. We had come out of the billiard room by this time and were going along the passage, and I was still doing my best to make both of them see the ordinary, commonplace possibilities of the happening, when what killed my pig, as the saying goes,
we gotta bring that back.
was the sound of a hoof in the dark billiard room we had just left.
We gotta bring that back. You know what really killed my pig?
We gotta go back to that.
When what killed my pig, as the saying goes, is how it is written.
In what way does the saying go?
You know what really kills my pig? You know, it's like what grinds my gears. What kills my pig?
Is that actually how it works?
Yeah. What gets your goat, what kills your pig, what blows your hair back, you know, it's all the same.
Yeah. What really zips your tip?
Yeah.
Whatever kills your pig.
Whatever bonkers your yonkers. I felt the quote-unquote creep come up on me in a flash, up my spine and over the back of my head.
Me when the creep is after me.
Miss Hiskins whooped like a child with a whooping cough. Wow.
Yeah, that's...
I wonder if that's why they call it that.
Maybe just whooping cough.
She
guys.
just went, and like ran away.
She might have whooping cough.
Yeah,
like...
seriously.
And ran up the passage, giving little gasping screams. Beaumont, however, ripped round on his heels and jumped back a couple of yards. I gave back too, a bit, as you can understand. There it is, he said in a low, breathless voice. Perhaps you'll believe now. There's certainly something, I whispered, never taking my gaze off the closed door of the billiard room. Ish, he muttered. There it is again. There was a sound like a great horse pacing round and round the billiard room with slow, deliberate steps. A horrible cold fright took me so that it seemed impossible to take a full breath, you know the feeling. And then I saw we must have been walking backward, for we found ourselves... For we found ourselves suddenly at the opening of the lawn passage.
Oh.
It's up to you now.
Okay. We stopped there and listened. The sounds went on steadily, with a horrible sort of deliberateness, as if the brute were taking a sort of malicious gusto and walking about all over the room which we had just occupied. Do you understand just what I mean? Fucking yes, Carnacki, I understand.
Not in the slightest, Carnacki.
Oh, how I've missed him.
Then there was a pause and a long time of absolute quiet, except for an excited whispering from some of the people down in the big hall. The sound came plainly up the wide stairway. I fancy they were gathered round Miss Hiskins with some notion of protecting her. I should think Beaumont and I stood there at the end of the passage for about 5 minutes, listening for any noise in the billiard room. Then I realized what a horrible funk I was in, and I said to him, I'm going to see what's there.
I don't like this funk at all.
So am I, he answered. He was pretty white, but he had heaps of pluck.
Wait.
I told him to wait 1 instant, and I made a dash into my bedroom and got my camera and flashlight. I slipped my revolver into my right-hand pocket and a knuckle duster over my left fist.
I'm gonna punch the shit out of this ghost.
Where it was ready and yet would not stop me from being able to work my flashlight. Yeah, weird tools for an invisible horse, but alright.
This fucking horse I can't see has got it coming, I swear to God.
Then I ran back to Beaumont. He held out his hand to show me that he had his pistol, and I nodded, but whispered to him not to be too quick to shoot, as there might be some silly practical joking after all.
That would just make me shoot faster.
Yeah, the practical jokes that killed 5 women over 5 generations. Definitely that. He had got a lamp from a bracket in the upper hall, which he was holding in the crook of his damaged arm, so that we had a good light. Then we went down the passage toward the billiard room, and you can imagine that we were a pretty nervous couple. All this time, there had not been a sound, but abruptly, when we were within perhaps a couple of yards of the door, we heard the sudden clumping of a hoof on the solid parquet floor of the billiard room. In the instant afterward, it seemed to me that the whole place shook beneath the ponderous hoof falls of some huge thing coming toward the door. Both Beaumont and I gave back a pace or two, and then realized and hung on to our courage, as you might say, and waited. The great tread came right up to the door, and then stopped, and there was an instant of absolute silence, except that so far as I was concerned, the pulsing in my throat and temples almost deafened me. I dare say we waited quite half a minute, and then came the further restless clumping of a great hoof. Immediately afterward, the sounds came right on, as if some invisible thing passed through the closed door, and the ponderous tread was upon us. We jumped, each of us, to our side of the passage, and I know that I spread myself stiff against the wall. The clunk, 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 clunk of the great hoof falls passed right between us, and slowly, and with deadly deliberateness, down the passage. I heard them through a haze of blood beats in my ears and temples, and my body was extraordinarily rigid and pringling. and I was horribly breathless and hard. I stood for a little time like this.
Pringling?
My head turned so that I could see up the passage. I was conscious only that there was a hideous danger abroad. Do you understand? Fuck you, Carnacki.
Pringling, was he?
And then, suddenly, my pluck came back to me. I was aware that the noise of the hoofbeats sounded near the other end of the passage. I twisted quickly and got my camera to bear and snapped off the flashlight. Immediately afterward, Beaumont let fly a storm of shots down the passage and began to run, shouting, "It's after Mary! Run! Run!" He rushed down the passage and I after him. We came out on the main landing and heard the sound of a hoof on the stairs, and after that, nothing. And from thence onward, nothing. Down below us in the big hall, I could see a member of the household round Miss Hisgins, who seemed to have fainted, and there were several of the servants clumped together a little way off, staring up at the main landing, and no one saying a single word. And about some 20 steps up the stairs was the old Captain Hisgins, with a drawn sword in his hand, where he had halted just below the last hoof sound. I think I never saw anything finer than the old man standing there between his daughter and that infernal thing with a sword? Okay.
Oh, it's a sword. Everyone is going to beat the shit out of this ghost.
I dare say you can understand the queer feeling of horror I had at passing that place on the stairs where the sounds had ceased. It was as if the monster were still standing there, invisible. And the peculiar thing was that we never heard another sound of the hoof, either up or down the stairs. After they had taken Miss Hisgins to her room, I sent word that I should follow, so soon as they were ready for me. And presently, when a message came to tell me that I could come any time, I asked her father to give me a hand with my instrument box, and between us we carried it into the girl's bedroom.
Gotta load the gear into the fucking bedroom.
Yeah, we got a gig.
Why couldn't we backline these cabs? Listen. Sick of lugging this shit around.
I had the bed pulled well out into the middle of the room, after which I erected the electric pentacle round the bed.
Oh yeah, the electric pentacle!
Gotta get that stage set up.
We gotta get that new Arion album's coming out, the electric pentacle.
It's the same joke we made in the first episode, damn.
And I'll never stop, I love it.
Don't apologize.
The electric pentacle is the best part.
Then I directed that lamps should be placed round the room, but that on no account must any light be made within the pentacle. Neither must anyone pass in or out.
This was in my rider. If anyone passes into the pentacle, I'm not playing this show.
I'm not playing the show. The horse will stay.
The girl's mother I had placed within the pentacle and directed that her maid should sit without, ready to carry any message, so as to make sure that Mrs. Hisgins did not have to leave the pentacle. I suggested also that the girl's father should stay the night in the room, and that he had better be armed. Wait, so we're putting the girl's mom in the fucking ritual shape? Like,
yeah,
what?
Not the girl who's it's trying to kill?
Yeah, I don't know what's up with this. When I left the bedroom, I found Beaumont waiting outside the door in a miserable state of anxiety. I told him what I had done and explained to him that Miss Hisgins was probably perfectly safe within the protection, but that in addition to her father remaining the night in the room, I intended to stand guard at the door. I told him that I should like him to keep me company, for I knew that he could never sleep, feeling as he did, and I should not be sorry to have a companion. Also, I wanted to have him under my own observation, for there was no doubt but that he was actually in greater danger in some ways than the girl. At least, that was my opinion and is still, as I think you will agree, later. I asked him whether he would object to my drawing a pentacle round him for the night, and got him to agree, but I saw that he did not know whether to be superstitious about it, or to regard it more as a piece of foolish mumming. But he took it seriously enough when I gave him some particulars about the Black Veil case, when young Astor died. You remember.
When I played that Black Veil Bride set.
They went to the wrong consort.
He said it was a piece of silly superstition and stayed outside. Poor devil. The night passed quietly enough until a little while before dawn, when we both heard the sounds of a great horse galloping round and round the house, just as old Captain Hisgins had described it. I can imagine how queer it made me feel, and directly afterward, I heard someone stir within the bedroom. I knocked at the door, for I was uneasy, and the captain came. I asked whether everything was right, to which he replied, yes, and immediately asked me whether I had heard the galloping, so that I knew he had heard them also. I suggested that it might be well to leave the bedroom door open a little until the dawn came in, as there was certainly something abroad. This was done, and he went back into the room to be near his wife and daughter. I had better say here that I was doubtful whether there was any value in the defense about Miss Hisgins, for what I termed the personal sounds of the manifestation were so extraordinarily material that I was inclined to parallel the case with that one of Harford's, where the hand of the child kept materializing within the pentacle and patting the floor. As you will remember, that was a hideous business.
I hated seeing a child. Next.
Same, dude. Yes, as it chanced, nothing further happened, and so soon as daylight had fully come, we all went off to bed. Beaumont knocked me up about midday, and I went down and made breakfast into lunch.
Damn.
Damn. Fuck, Beaumont gets done quick. Beaumont's about his business.
Miss Hiskins was there, and seemed in very fair spirits, considering, that she had just knocked me up.
I just had sex with her fiance.
She told me that I had made her feel almost safe for the first time for days. She told me also that her cousin, Harry Parsket, was coming down from London, and she knew that he would do anything to help fight the ghost. Because that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna shoot it and stab it.
I'm Harry Parsket. I'm coming down from low to beat the shit out of this ghost. Let's go.
Oh, let's go. From the top buckle, I'm coming at you.
What's that, cousin? You need me to beat the fuck out of someone? It's a ghost? No problem. Harry Parsket.
Harry Parsket. Pay for the whole seat. Only use the edge.
And after that, she and Beaumont went out into the grounds to have a little time together. I had a walk in the grounds myself and went round the house, but saw no traces of hoof marks, and after that I spent the rest of the day making an examination of the house, but found nothing. I made an end of my search before dark and went to my room to dress for dinner. When I got down, the cousin had just arrived, and found him one of the nicest men I have met for a long time.
Harry Parsket!
A chap with a tremendous amount of pluck, and the particular kind of man I like to have with me in a bad case like the one I was on.
He's ready to fight horse ghosts. He's just drop of a hat, this guy. He's like...
A man who's ready to throw hands with a horse at any moment.
I could see that what puzzled him most was our belief in the genuineness of the haunting, and I found myself almost wanting something to happen just to show him how true it was. As it chanced, something did happen, with a vengeance. Beaumont and Miss Hiskins had gone out for a stroll just before the dusk, and Captain Hiskins asked me to come into his study for a short chat, whilst Parsket went upstairs with his traps, for he had no man with him.
Like his trap, his trapezius muscles? He's just like, man, he went up there, those sick traps.
God, I'm fucking John Jigsaw, I'm gonna get this horse in my trap.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like he just came prepared with ghost traps. Like I don't know. Or I guess because he doesn't think it's a ghost, so he came with some kind of like physical. Like he's gonna trap a horse like a raccoon.
Harry Parsket actually heard that Carnacki was in town. He's like, oh, I gotta see this shit. Yeah, man, I brought my traps. Or it's just like a box. It's like, yeah, it's my ghost trap. And Carnacki's like, oh yeah, that totally works. And Harry Parsket is like, damn, this guy's dumb.
I think what they might mean is that traps is slang for trappings, like his luggage. And he's going upstairs with his own luggage because he hasn't brought a valet or man with him.
I see.
You know, Ken, that makes the most sense.
It's me, Captain Buzzkill, here to ruin everyone's fun.
Yeah, it's a lot less fun.
I had a long conversation with the old captain, in which I pointed out that the haunting had evidently no particular connection with the house, but only with the girl herself, and that the sooner she was married, the better, as it would give Beaumont a right to be with her at all times, and further than this, it might be that the manifestations would cease if the marriage were actually performed. The old man nodded agreement to this, especially to the first part, and reminded me that 3 of the girls who were said to have been haunted had been sent away from home and met their deaths whilst away. And then, in the midst of our talk, there came a pretty frightening interruption, for all at once, the old butler rushed into the room, most extraordinarily pale. "Miss Mary, sir! Miss Mary, sir!" he gasped. "She's screaming! Out in the park, sir! And they say they can hear the horse!" Captain made one dive for a rack of arms and snatched down his old sword and ran out, drawing it as he ran.
You're not supposed to run with knives, sir! You can't do that!
No, you gotta. There's a horse is coming.
I dashed out and up the stairs, snatched my camera flashlight and a heavy revolver, gave one yell at Parsket's door, "The horse!" and was down and into the grounds. Away in the darkness there was a confused shouting, and I caught the sounds of shooting out among the scattered trees.
Shoot the ghost.
And then, from a patch of blackness to my left, there burst suddenly an infernal gobbling sort of neighing.
Thank you, Chris. That is precisely how I picture it is.
Instantly, whipped round and snapped off the flashlight. The great light blazed out momentarily, showing me the leaves of a big tree close at hand, but maybe it was trying to kiss me, I don't know. Quivering in the night breeze.
Smooches coming at me in the night.
But I saw nothing else. And then the tenfold blackness came down upon me, and I heard Parsket shouting a little way back to know whether I had seen anything.
Here comes Harry Parsket!
The next instant, he was beside me, and I felt safer for his company, for there was some incredible thing near to us, and I was momentarily blind because of the brightness of the flashlight. What was it? What was it? He kept repeating in an excited voice.
You're not supposed to point it at yourself, Carnacki.
And all the time I was staring into the darkness and answering, mechanically, I don't know, man. There was a burst of shouting somewhere ahead, and then a shot. We ran towards the sounds, yelling to the people not to shoot, for in the darkness and panic, there was this danger also. Then there came 2 of the gamekeepers racing hard up the drive with their lanterns and guns, and immediately afterward a row of lights dancing toward us from the house, carried by some of the menservants. As the lights came up, I saw we had come close to Beaumont. He was standing over Miss Hiskins, and he had his revolver in his hand. Then I saw his face. There was a great wound across his forehead. By him was the captain, turning his naked sword this way and that, and peering into the darkness. A little behind him stood the old butler, a battle axe from one of the arm stands in the hall in his hands.
Hell yeah!
Butler rules.
It's just a whole stand for battle axes.
Bro, Butler of the Year. Fucking, he grabbed a fucking random battle axe. He's like, I'm fucking coming. I swear to God.
It's me and Harry Parsket. We got this handled.
We got this.
Yet there was nothing strange to be seen anywhere. We got the girl into the house and left her with her mother and Beaumont, whilst a groom rode for a doctor. And then the rest of us, with 4 other keepers, all armed with guns and carrying lanterns, searched round the park. Searched around the home park. Fuck. Alright. Sorry. I said park home.
You had a good run, Paris. You had a good run.
Yeah, I did.
But we found nothing. When we got back, we found that the doctor had been. It just had been.
He existed. At one point, the doctor was.
Yeah, it turns out there was one. He had bound up Beaumont's wound, which luckily was not deep, and ordered Miss Hiskins straight to bed. I went upstairs with the captain and found Beaumont on guard outside of the girl's door. I asked him how he felt, and then, so soon as the girl and her mother were ready for us, Captain Hiskins and I went into the bedroom and fixed the pentacle again round the bed. Sounds very much like he didn't wait for him to answer.
Yeah.
Like, how are you feeling? Bad? Gotcha. Alright, later. They had already got lamps about the room, and after I had set the same order of watching as on the previous night, I joined Beaumont outside of the door. Parsket had come up while I had been in the bedroom, and between us we got some idea from Beaumont as to what had happened out in the park. It seems they were coming home after their stroll from the direction of the West Lodge. It had got quite dark, and suddenly Miss Hiskins said, "Hush!" came to a standstill. He stopped and listened, but heard nothing for a little. Then he caught it. The sound of a horse, seemingly a long way off, galloping toward them over the grass. He told the girl that it was nothing and started to hurry her toward the house, but she was not deceived, of course. In less than a minute, they heard it quite close to them in the darkness, and they started running. Then Miss Hiskins caught her foot and fell. She began to scream, and that is what the butler heard. As Beaumont lifted the girl, he heard the hoofs come thudding right after him. He stood over her and fired all 5 chambers of his revolver right at the seats.
Great.
He told us that he was sure. He told us he was sure. Fucking gunshots in a crowded mall. He told us he was sure he saw something.
I think you've cracked up there, D.
I think so. There's the fact that he thought there was a horse.
I mean, at an appropriate point of just someone just like heard one thing and just like all dumps it right into the darkness.
I fucking unloaded the whole, like, everything. I fanned the hammer.
He told us that he was sure he saw something that looked like an enormous horse's head right upon him in the light of the last flash of his pistol. But the first 4, he didn't see anything, so he kept going. Immediately afterward, he was struck a tremendous blow which knocked him down, and then the captain and the butler came running up shouting. The rest, of course, we knew. About 10 o'clock, the butler brought us up a tray, for which I was very glad, as the night before, I had got rather hungry. I warned Beaumont, however, to be very particular not to drink any spirits, and I also made him give me his pipe and matches.
I smoked them all in front of him.
None for you. At midnight, I drew a pentacle round him and Parsket, and I sat one on each side of him, outside the pentacle, for I had no fear that there would be any manifestation made against anyone except Beaumont or Miss Hiskins. After that, we kept pretty quiet. The passage was lit by a big lamp at each end so that we had plenty of light and we were all armed. Beaumont and I with revolvers, and Parsket with a shotgun. In addition to my weapon, I had my camera and flashlight. Now and again, we talked in whispers, and twice the captain came out of the bedroom to have a word with us. About 1:30, we had all grown very silent, and suddenly, about 20 minutes later, I held up my hand silently, for there seemed to be a sound of galloping out in the night. I knocked on the bedroom door for the captain to open it, and when he came, I whispered to him that we thought we heard the horse. For some time, we stayed listening, and both Parsket and the captain thought they heard it, but now I was not so sure. Neither was Beaumont. Yet afterward, I thought I heard it again. I told Captain Hiskins I thought he had better go into the bedroom and leave the door a little open, and this he did. But from that time onward, we heard nothing, and presently the dawn came in. We all went very thankfully to bed. When I was called at lunchtime, I had a little surprise. It was the baby that I had been knocked up with.
Yay!
For Captain Higgins told me that they had held a family council and had decided to take my advice and have the marriage without a day's more delay than possible. Beaumont was already on his way to London to get a special license, and they hoped to have the wedding next day. This pleased me, for it seemed the sanest thing to be done in the extraordinary circumstances, and meanwhile, I should continue my investigations. But until the marriage was accomplished, my chief thought was to keep Miss Higgins near me.
It was near to me. It's the
the tiny things that get me.
It's the little things.
Also, fucking Carnacki's turning to Mr. Steal Your Girl over here.
Yeah, really.
He's like, I think you better... Here's the thing, I think you better leave your fiancé, and I'll look after her. I think you should leave and be somewhere else, and I'll be around her all the time.
Yep, sounds about right.
Oh, no. After lunch, I thought I would take a few experimental photographs of Miss Higgins and her surroundings. Sometimes the camera sees things that would seem very strange to normal human eyesight. With this intention, and partly to make an excuse to keep her in my company as much as possible,
Just steal your girl.
I asked Miss Higgins to join me in my experiments. She seemed glad to do this, and I spent several hours with her, wandering all over the house from room to room, and whenever the impulse came, I took a flashlight of her in the room, or the corridor in which we chanced to be at the moment. After we had gone right through the house in this fashion, I asked her whether she felt sufficiently brave to repeat the experiments in the cellars. She said yes, and so I rooted out Captain Higgins and Parsket, for I was not going to take her even into what you might call artificial darkness without help and companionship at hand.
Wait, when was there experiments in the cellars before?
It's a great question.
Yeah, what? I don't remember that in the slightest.
I don't remember that being mentioned at all.
That was actually just when he went down to the cellar to jerk off.
Those experiments that you remember?
You know, the ones when I got knocked up.
When we were ready, we went down into the wine cellar, Captain Higgins carrying a shotgun and Parsket a specially prepared background and a lantern.
Oh, just in case you want to take a nice picture. You got the lighting and the background. Everything's ready.
Yeah, they're very professional.
I got the girl to stand in the middle of the cellar whilst Parsket and the captain held out the background behind her. Then I fired off the flashlight and we went into the next cellar where we repeated the experiment. Then in the third cellar, a tremendous pitch-dark place, something extraordinary and horrible manifested itself. I had stationed Miss Higgins in the center of the place, with her father and Parsket holding the background as before. When all was ready, and just as I pressed the trigger of the flash, there came in the cellar that dreadful gobbling neigh that I had heard out in the park.
Scooby-Doo-ass horse.
It seemed to come from somewhere above the girl, and in the glare of the sudden light I saw that she was staring tensely upward, but at no visible thing. And then in the succeeding comparative darkness, I was shouting to the captain and Parsket to run Miss Higgins out into the daylight. This was done instantly, and I shut and locked the door afterward, making the 1st and 8th signs of the Sama ritual.
2 through 7, kind of useless, honestly.
Opposite to each post and connecting them across the threshold with a triple line. In the meanwhile, Parsket and Captain Higgins carried the girl to her mother and left her there, in a half-fainting condition, whilst I stayed on guard outside of the cellar door, feeling pretty horrible, for I knew that there was some disgusting thing inside, and along with this feeling there was a sense of half-ashamedness, rather miserable.
Rather miserable.
I was miserable.
You know, I'm always miserable and smarch.
Yeah.
Rather miserable, you know, because I had exposed Miss Higgins to the danger.
I had got the captain's shotgun, and when he and Parsket came down again, they were each carrying guns and lanterns. That doesn't seem... What are you gonna do with the gun if you've also got a lantern? I don't know, it doesn't seem very...
Well, the lantern's so you can see what you're shooting when you fan the hammer.
You fan the hammer. I think more importantly is, how many times have we shot this horse?
I cannot possibly tell you the utter relief of spirit and body that came to me when I heard them coming, but just try to imagine what it was like standing outside of that cellar. Can you? I remember noticing, just before I went to unlock the door, how white and ghastly Parsket looked, and the old captain was grey-looking, and I wondered whether my face was like theirs. And this, you know, had its own distinct effect upon my nerves, for it seemed to bring the beastliness of the thing crashing down onto me in a fresh way. I know it was only sheer willpower that carried me up to the door and made me turn the key. I paused one little moment and then, with a nervy jerk, sent the door wide open and held my lantern over my head. Parsket and the captain came one on each side of me and held up their lanterns, but the place was absolutely empty. Of course, I did not trust to a casual look of this kind, but spent several hours with the help of the two others in sounding every square foot of the floor, ceiling, and walls. So it's just 2 hours just hitting the floor, ceiling, and walls. Okay.
That's a good use of your time.
We're checking the acoustics out. I have to know exactly where all the standing waves are.
Oh, that's right. He's got to do that gig with the Black Veil Brides.
Mm-hmm.
True. Yet, in the end, I had to admit that the place itself was absolutely normal, and so we came away. But I sealed the door, and outside, opposite each doorpost, I made the first and last signs of the Sa-Ma ritual, joined them as before with a triple line. Can you imagine what it was like, searching that cellar that had absolutely nothing in it and was just empty? Yeah, super terrifying.
It sounds boring.
When we got upstairs, I inquired very anxiously how Miss Hiskins was, and the girl came out herself to tell me that she was all right, and that I was not to trouble about her, or blame myself, as I told her I had been doing. I felt happier then, and went off to dress for dinner, and after that was done, Parsket and I took one of the bathrooms to develop the negatives that I had been taking. Yet none of the plates had anything to tell us until we came to the one that was taken in the cellar. Parsket was developing, and I had taken a batch of the fixed plates out into the lamplight to examine them. I had just gone carefully through the lot when I heard a shout from Parsket, and when I ran to him, he was looking at a partly developed negative which he was holding up to the red lamp. It showed the girl plainly, looking upward as I had seen her, but the thing that astonished me was the shadow of an enormous hoof right above her, as if it were coming down upon her out of the shadows. And you know, I had run her bang into that danger. That was the thought that was chief in my mind. As soon as the developing was complete, I fixed the plate and examined it carefully in a good light. There was no doubt about it at all. The thing above Miss Hiskins was an enormous, shadowy hoof. Yet I was no nearer to coming to any definite knowledge, and the only thing I could do was to warn Parsket to say nothing about it to the girl, for it would only increase her fright. But I showed the thing to her father, for I considered it right that he should know. That night, we took the same precaution for Miss Hiskins' safety as on the 2 previous nights, and Parsket kept me company. Yet the dawn came in without anything unusual having happened, and I went off to bed. When I got down to lunch, I learned that Beaumont had wired to say that he would be in soon after 4, also that a message had been sent to the rector, and it was generally plain that the ladies of the house were in a tremendous fluster. Beaumont's train was late, and he did not get home until 5, but even then the rector had not put in an appearance, and the butler came in to say that the coachman had returned without him, as he had been called away unexpectedly. Twice more during the evening the carriage was sent down, but the clergyman had not returned, and we had to delay the marriage until the next day. That night I arranged the defense round the girl's bed, and the captain and his wife sat up with her as before. Beaumont, as I expected, insisted on keeping watch with me, and he seemed in a curiously frightened mood, not for himself, you know, but for Miss Hiskins. He had a horrible feeling, he told me, that there would be a final, dreadful attempt on his sweetheart that night.
At this point, Beaumont has a broken arm and like a head injury, right?
Yep.
Yeah, he's pretty fucked up.
So put this man to bed.
This, of course, I told him, was nothing but nerves. Yet, really, it made me feel very anxious, for I have seen too much not to know that under such circumstances, a premonitory conviction of impending danger is not necessarily to be put down entirely to nerves. In fact, Beaumont was so simply and earnestly convinced that the night would bring some extraordinary manifestation that I got Parsket to rig up a long cord from the wire of the butler's bell to come along the passage handy. To the butler himself, I gave directions not to undress and to give the same order to 2 of the footmen.
Listen, keep it closed. Keep it in your pants, guys. Jesus Christ.
Pants the fuck on, fellas.
If I rang, he was to come instantly, with the footmen carrying lanterns, and the lanterns were to be kept ready lit all night. If for any reason the bell did not ring, and I blew my whistle, he was to take that as a signal in the place of the bell. After I had arranged all these minor details, I drew a pentacle about Beaumont and warned him very particularly to stay within it, whatever happened. And when this was done, there was nothing to do but wait and pray that the night would go as quietly as the night before. We scarcely talked at all, and by about 1 a.m. we were all very tense and nervous, so that at last Parsket got up and began to walk up and down the corridor to steady himself a bit. Presently I slipped off my pumps
I was wearing my little fuck me pumps.
and joined him, and we walked up and down, whispering occasionally for something over an hour, until, in turning, I caught my foot in the bell cord and went down on my face, but without hurting myself or making a noise.
Dumb shit. You dumb bitch.
When I got up, Parsket nudged me. "Did you notice the bell never rang?" he whispered. "Jove," I said, "you're right." "Wait a minute," he answered. "I'll bet it's only a kink somewhere in the cord." He left his gun and slipped along the passage, and taking the top lamp, tiptoed away into the house, carrying Beaumont's revolver ready in his right hand. It was a plucky chap, I remember thinking then, and again, later. Just then, Beaumont motioned to me for absolute quiet. Directly afterward, I heard the thing for which he listened, the sound of a horse galloping out in the night. I think that I may say I fairly shivered. The sound died away and left a horrible, desolate, eerie feeling in the air, you know. I put my hand out to the bell cord, hoping Parsket had got it clear. Then I waited, glancing before and behind. Perhaps 2 minutes passed, full of what seemed like an almost unearthly quiet. And then, suddenly, down the corridor at the lighted end, there sounded the clumping of a great hoof, and instantly, the lamp was thrown with a tremendous crash and we were in the dark. I tugged hard on the cord and blew the whistle, then I raised my snapshot and fired the flashlight. The corridor blazed into brilliant light, but there was nothing, and then the darkness fell like thunder. I heard the captain at the bedroom door and shouted to him to bring out a lamp, quick, but instead something started to kick the door, and I heard the captain shouting within the bedroom, and then the screaming of the women. I had a sudden horrible fear that the monster had got into the bedroom, but in the same instant, from up the corridor, there came abruptly the vile, gobbling neighing that we had heard in the park and the cellar. Thank you, Chris.
I'm ready all times, always.
I blew the whistle again and groped blindly for the bell cord, shouting to Beaumont to stay in the pentacle, whatever happened. I yelled again to the captain to bring out a lamp, and there came a smashing sound against the bedroom door. Then I had my matches in my hand to get some light before that incredible, unseen monster was upon us.
Capital M, monster.
Yes, the match scraped on the box and flared up dully, and in the same instant I heard a faint sound behind me. I whipped round in a kind of mad terror and saw something in the light of the match, a monstrous horse head close to Beaumont. "Look out, Beaumont," I shouted in a sort of scream. "It's behind you."
Shouted in a sort of scream.
I screamed in a sort of yell.
The match went out abruptly, and instantly there came the huge bang of Parsket's double barrel, both barrels at once, he had to tell us, in parentheses, fired evidently single-handed by Beaumont close to my ear, as it seemed. I caught a momentary glimpse of the great head in the flash, and of an enormous hoof amid the belch of fire and smoke seeming to be descending upon Beaumont. In the same instant, I fired 3 chambers of my revolver.
Okay, so in this small hallway, we have a shotgun going off, a double barrel, and a revolver in, like, cross directions.
Yes.
Everyone in this house is gonna be dead in a minute.
And it's all gonna be that damn horse's fault.
There was the sound of a dull blow, and then that horrible, gobbling neigh broke out close to me. I fired twice at the sound. Yeah, I'd fire at that.
Yeah, I'd fire that immediately.
Immediately afterwards, something struck me, and I was knocked backward. I wonder if it was a fucking bullet. I got onto my knees and shouted for help at the top of my voice. I heard the women screaming behind the closed door of the bedroom and was duly aware that the door was being smashed from the inside, and directly afterward, I knew that Beaumont was struggling with some hideous thing near to me.
Dully aware or duly aware?
Did I say I said duly, right?
Yeah, it's dully.
Oh, okay. I thought that was pronounced duly, but...
Well, there are 2 words. Dully, as in something that has been done in a dull fashion, and then duly, which is something that has been done in a dutiful fashion.
So...
If it's 1 L, it's duly. If it's 2 L's, it's dully.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I was wrong. Okay, well, someone else gets to talk about how he was stupidly held back and paralyzed with funk then.
For an instant, I held back, stupidly, paralyzed with funk, and then blindly, and in a sort of rigid chill of goose flesh, I went to help him, shouting his name, still with the funk. Yeah, paralyzed with the funk. I can tell you, I was nearly sick with the naked fear I had on me. And not with the naked butlers, because I made sure they kept their clothes on. There came a little choking scream out of the darkness, and at that I jumped forward into the dark. I gripped a vast, furry ear. Thank God that's how that sentence ended. Then something struck me another great blow, knocking me sick. I hit back, weak and blind, and gripped with my other hand at the incredible thing. Shout out to Carnacki for getting kicked by a horse and his first thought is to throw a punch.
Yeah, really.
Abruptly, I was dimly aware of a tremendous crash behind me and a great burst of light. There were other lights in the passage and a noise of feet and shouting. My hand grips were torn from the thing they held. I shut my eyes stupidly and heard a loud yell above me, and then a heavy blow, like a butcher chopping meat, and then something fell upon me. I was helped to my knees by the captain and the butler. On the floor lay an enormous horse head out of which
Oh.
Oh,
Which
man.
protruded.
D, your time on this earth today has been short.
It has been difficult, but I did get to do the funk thing, so.
It's true. It's true.
You did get to do the funk.
Yeah, at least. On the floor lay an enormous horse head, out of which protruded a man's trunk and legs. On the wrists were fixed great hoofs. It was the monster.
A furry.
The captain cut something with the sword that he held in his hand and stooped and lifted off the mask, for that is what it was. I saw the face then of the man who had worn it. It was Parskett.
No!
He had a bad wound across the forehead where the captain's sword had bit through the mask. I looked bewildered from him to Beaumont, who was sitting up, leaning against the wall of the corridor. Then I stared at Parskett again. By Jove, I said at last, and then I was quiet, for I was so ashamed for the man. You can understand, can't you? And he was opening his eyes, and then, I had grown so to like him.
Like him.
And then, just as Parskett was getting back his wits and looking from one to the other of us, and beginning to remember, there happened a strange and incredible thing. For from the end of the corridor there sounded suddenly the clumping of a great hoof. I looked that way and then instantly at Parskett and saw horrible fear in his face and eyes. He wrenched himself round weakly and stared in mad terror up the corridor to where the sound had been, and the rest of us stared in a frozen group. I remember vaguely half sobs and whispers from Miss Hisgins' bedroom, all the while that I stared frightenedly up the corridor. The silence lasted several seconds, and then abruptly there came again the clumping of the great hoof, away at the end of the corridor, and immediately afterward the clunk, 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 clunk of mighty hoofs coming down the passage toward us. Even then, most of us thought it was some mechanism of Parskett still at work, and we were in the queerest mixture of fright and doubt. I think everyone looked at Parskett, and suddenly the captain shouted out, "Stop this damned fooling at once! Haven't you done enough?" For my part, I was now frightened, for I had a sense that there was something horrible and wrong. And then Parskett managed to gasp out, "It's not me! My God, it's not me! My God, it's not me!" And then, it seemed to come home to everyone in an instant that there was really some dreadful thing coming down the passage. There was a mad rush to get away, and even old Captain Hisgins gave back, with the butler and the footman. Beaumont fainted outright, as I found afterward, for he had been badly mauled. I just flattened back against the wall, kneeling as I was, too stupid and dazed even to run. And almost in the same instant the ponderous hoof-falls sounded close to me, and seeming to shake the solid floor as they passed. Abruptly the great sound ceased, and I knew in a sort of sick fashion that the thing had halted opposite to the door of the girl's bedroom. And then I was aware that Parskett was standing rocking in the doorway, with his arms spread across, so as to fill the doorway with his body. Parskett was extraordinarily pale, and the blood was running down his face from the wound in his forehead. And then I noticed that he seemed to be looking at something in the passage with a peculiar, desperate, fixed, incredibly masterful gaze. But there was really nothing to be seen, and suddenly the clunk, 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 clunk recommenced and passed onward down the passage. In the same moment, Parskett pitched forward out of the doorway onto his face. There were shouts from the huddle of men down the passage, and the two footmen and the butler simply ran, carrying their lanterns, but the captain went against the side wall with his back and put the lamp he was carrying over his head. The dull tread of the horse went past him and left him unharmed, and I heard the monstrous hoof-falls going away and away through the quiet house, and after that a dead silence. Then the captain moved and came toward us, very slow and shaky, and with an extraordinarily grave face. I crept toward Parskett, and the captain came to help me. We turned him over, and I knew in a moment that he was dead, but you can imagine what a feeling it sent through me. I looked at the captain, and suddenly he said, that, and I know he was trying to tell me that Parskett had stood between his daughter and whatever it was that had gone down the passage.
That's a lot of extrapolation.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know how he got there, but alright.
At best, what we know is that something happened, and Parskett is dead.
I stood up and steadied him, though I was not very steady myself, and suddenly his face began to work, and he went down onto his knees by Parskett and cried like some shaken child. Then the women came out of the doorway of the bedroom, and I turned away and left him to them, whilst I over to Beaumont.
So kind of mean. Like the guy's like his nephew just died, and he starts crying, and Carnacki's like, ugh.
Time to fuck off.
And just I gotta go do something. I gotta go do something else. This is awkward.
That is practically the whole story.
Oh, thank God.
And the only thing that is left to me is to try to explain some of the puzzling parts here and there. Perhaps you have seen that Parsket was in love with Miss Hisgins, and this fact is the key to a good deal that was extraordinary. He was doubtless responsible for some portions of the haunting. In fact, I think for nearly everything, but I can prove nothing. And what I have to tell you is chiefly the result of deduction, so really doing a bad job all around as an investigator.
Yeah.
He's like, it's all because this guy just wanted to marry his cousin.
And that's the saddest part of all.
In the first place, it is obvious that Parsket's intention was to frighten Beaumont away, and when he found that he could not do this, I think he grew so desperate that he really intended to kill him. I hate to say this, but the facts force me to think so.
I mean, yeah, he's got like 3 or 4 injuries at this point. So I think so.
Yeah, Beaumont has been thrashed. I think he was trying to kill him, yes.
I am quite certain that it was Parsket who broke Beaumont's arm. He knew all the details of the so-called horse legend and got the idea to work upon the old story for his own end. He evidently had some method of slipping in and out of the house, probably through one of the many French windows, or possibly he had a key to 1 or 2 of the garden doors. And when he was supposed to be away, he was really coming down on the quiet and hiding somewhere in the neighborhood.
I love how it's like, I don't know how he got in, maybe in one of these 12 ways. I don't know. I mean, it's just like your house is a fucking sieve.
Any of the million ways.
The incident of the kiss in the dark hall I put down to sheer nervous imaginings on the part of Beaumont and Miss Hisgins. Yet I must say that the sound of the horse outside of the front door is a little difficult to explain away.
I mean, it could have just been a horse.
Couldn't possibly have been just a horse outside.
Yeah, really.
Could have just been a horse outside.
Yeah, that might have actually just been a horse.
But I am still inclined to keep my very erst idea. Almost brought it home, I'm sorry.
Almost. But I am still inclined to keep to my first idea on this point, that there was nothing really unnatural about it. The hoof sounds in the billiard room and down the passage were done by Parsket from the floor below by bumping up against the paneled ceiling with a block of wood tied to one of the window hooks. That is hilarious.
No one noticed the wooden blocks.
Wow.
That's so Scooby-Doo, I love it.
Yeah, no one noticed that. It was coming from outside the house.
How many members of the staff saw this happening and just didn't say anything?
This is funny. We're not going to say anything. This is actually hilarious.
Because they have a full country house staff.
Although one of us did get shot when they fanned the revolver, but that, worth it.
Oh, God. I proved this by an examination which showed the dents in the woodwork.
And you didn't see this after, there was a bunch of days where you could have been investigating, and it was after.
Great. Before. Now you gotta store up all the energy for the Sama ritual and fucking draw pentacles and hold guns in the dark, not actually do any investigative detective work.
The sounds of the horse galloping round the house were possibly made also by Parsket, who must have had a horse tied up in the plantation nearby, unless indeed he made the sounds himself.
So we already proved that he did horse galloping sounds in a hallway, and probably to do around the house, he just brought an actual horse in.
Yeah, the thing is, there are horses here,
Yeah, what?
But I do not see how he could have gone fast enough to produce the illusion.
he's slow as fuck.
Certainly not by riding a horse around the house in a circle.
He couldn't have done that.
Yeah, too hard. Did no one look out a window when that was happening to, check to see if it was a horse riding around the house outside? No one looked?
No, too scary. What if the horse gets you?
In any case, I don't feel perfect certainty on this point. I failed to find any hoof marks, as you remember. The gobble-neighing in the park was a ventriloquial achievement on the part of Parsket.
Ventriloquial?
I did not know that ventriloquial is a word.
We recognize Harry Parsket for the ventriloquial achievements this year with the Ventriloquy Award.
10 out of 10. Unfortunately, they will be posthumous.
And the attack out there on Beaumont was also by him, so that when I thought he was in his bedroom, he must have been outside all the time and joined me after I ran out of the front door. This is almost probable. I mean that Parsket was the cause, for if it had been something more serious, he would certainly have given up his foolishness, knowing that there was no longer any need for it. I cannot imagine how he escaped being shot, both then and in the last mad action of which I have just told you. He was enormously without fear of any kind for himself, as you can see. So Parsket is suicidal and a horse furry. Got it.
Yep.
And here's the thing, I still love Parsket. 10 out of 10 character. Suicidal, incestuous furry.
The time when Parsket was with us, when we thought we heard the horse galloping round the house, we must have been deceived. No one was very sure, except of course Parsket, who would naturally encourage the belief. The neighing in the cellar is where I consider there came the first suspicion into Parsket's mind that there was something more at work than his sham haunting. The neighing was done by him in that same way he did it in the park, but when I remember how ghastly he looked, I feel sure that the sounds must have had some infernal quality added to them, which frightened the man himself. Yet later he would persuade himself that he had been getting fanciful. Of course, I must not forget that the effect upon Miss Hisgins must have made him feel pretty miserable. Then, about the clergyman being called away, we found afterwards that it was a bogus errand, or rather, call, and it is apparent that Parsket was at the bottom of this, so as to get a few more hours in which to achieve his end, and what that was, a very little imagination will show you, semicolon, for he had found that Beaumont would not be frightened away. I hate to think this, but I'm bound to. Anyway, it is obvious that the man was temporarily a bit off his normal balance. Love's a queer disease!
I'd be saying that all the time.
Then there is no doubt at all but that Parsket left the cord to the butler's bell hitched somewhere so as to give him an excuse to slip away naturally to clear it. This also gave him the opportunity to remove one of the passage lamps. Then he had only to smash the other, and the passage was in utter darkness for him to make the attempt on Beaumont. In the same way, it was he who locked the door of the bedroom and took the key, parenthetical, it was in his pocket. This prevented the captain from bringing a light and coming to the rescue, but Captain Hisgins broke down the door with the heavy fender curb, and it was his smashing the door that sounded so confusing and frightening in the darkness of the passage. The photograph of the monstrous hoof above Miss Hisgins in the cellar is one of the things that I am less sure about. It might have been faked by Parsket whilst I was out of the room, and this would have been easy enough to anyone who knew how. But you know it does not look like a fake.
Okay, yeah, I like that he's just like, it would have been very easy to do, there was an opportunity, and he's obviously been pretending to be a horse for like a week. But, what if it wasn't? Hear me out.
Yet there is as much evidence of probability that it was faked as against. And the thing is too vague for an examination to help to... for an examination to help to a definite decision, so that I will express no opinion one way or the other. It is certainly a horrible photograph.
This is a terrible photograph. Who took this? I did? Oh, crap.
Sucks to look at.
Oh, I can see the end. I can see the end. We're so close. We're so fucking close. And now I come to that last dreadful thing. There has been no further manifestation of anything abnormal, so that there is an extraordinary uncertainty in my conclusions. If we had not heard those last sounds, and if Parsket had not shown that enormous sense of fear, the whole of this case could be explained in the way in which I have shown. And in fact, as you have seen, I am of the opinion that almost all of it can be cleared up. But I see no way of going past the thing we heard at the last, and the fear that Parsket showed. His death, no, that proves nothing. At the inquest, it was described somewhat untechnically as due to heart spasm. That is normal enough and leaves us quite in the dark as to whether he died because he stood between the girl and some incredible thing of monstrosity. The look on Parsket's face and the thing he called out when he heard the great hoof sounds coming down the passage seemed to show that he had the sudden realization of what before then may have been nothing more than a horrible suspicion. And his fear and appreciation of some tremendous danger approaching was probably more keenly real, even than mine. And then he did the one fine, great thing. And the cause? I said. What caused it? Carnacki shook his head. God knows, he answered, with a peculiar, sincere reverence. If that thing was what it seemed to be, one might suggest an explanation which would not offend one's reason, but which may be utterly wrong. Yet I have thought, though it would take a long lecture on thought induction, capital T, capital I.
The lecture on how to have thoughts. Can I induce thoughts on you, you idiot, moron?
To get you to appreciate my reasons, that Parsket had produced what I might term a kind of induced haunting, a kind of induced simulation of his mental conceptions to his desperate thoughts and broodings. It is impossible to make it clearer in a few words.
Oh, he got inceptioned! They incepted him with a horse.
But the old story, I said. Why may not there have been something in that? There may have been something in it, said Carnacki, but I do not think it had anything to do with this. I have not clearly thought out my reasons yet, but later I may be able to tell you why I think so.
I haven't figured it out.
And the marriage? And the cellar? Was there anything found there? Asked Taylor. Yes, the marriage was performed that day in spite of the tragedy. They just married right over his body.
Damn.
Ripperoni.
It was the wisest thing to do considering the things that I cannot explain. Yes, I had the floor of that big cellar up, for I had a feeling I might find something there to give me some light. But there was nothing. You know, the whole thing is tremendous and extraordinary.
You made them tear up the floor of their cellar for no reason? I'd kill him.
I shall never forget the look on Parsket's face. And afterward, the disgusting sounds of those great hoofs going away through the quiet house. Carnacki stood up. Out you go, he said in a friendly fashion, using the recognized formula. And we went presently out into the quiet of the embankment, and so to our homes. The end.
Incredible.
Fucking Harry Parsket.
Oh my God.
We lived.
So I love that he calls them over, he tells them a story, and he's like, I haven't figured out any of it. Bye!
I don't fucking know what happened. Get out.
What am I, a ghost finder or something? What do you think I am?
I don't fucking know. It's fucking weird. It was weird, okay? Get out of my house.
Just the worst friend.
Well, he is a ghost finder, not a ghost explainer.
That's true. I found it.
Or even a ghost understander.
I found a ghost.
True, he did find the horse ghost.
He did.
All right, well,
What a magnificent journey.
oh, magical time. Well, that was a slog. And my bladder is saying I need to go. So
Would you say you have to pee like a race horse ghost, Paris?
Oh.
like a invisible horse, I guess.
Chris, can we get a gobbling neigh?
It's a little clowny. It got a little clowny somewhere in there.
Good lord. I mean, a gobble and a neigh, yeah, it's gonna sound pretty bizarre. I think you got it. All right, well, thank you for being here with us on the 5th anniversary of this promise that we have now kept 5 years later.
That's the last Carnacki. We buttoned it up. It's over.
It's over. It's over. We've nacked all the Carns.
And yet William Hope Hodgson wrote so many other stories.
Oh, God, don't remind me. Someday I'm sure we'll get to them.
Did he really? Shit, we should get to those.
Well, if you want to hear more of me and Chris, you can find us over at Terrible Book Club on any podcast player, whatever podcast player of your choice, terriblebookclub.com. We're on Blue Sky. We're on Tumblr now because we found out we have fans there. Hello, Tumblr.
Yeah, tumble it up. Tumblerinas.
Anyway, thank you for having us. We were always happy to read a knack with y'all. And hope you enjoyed that.
I'm not. Don't speak for me. I'm never happy. No, I'm joking.
You guys do have a knack for it.
A card knack.
The pain that I feel is deep. You've cut me. You've cut me this day.
We gotta end it on that,
Yep.
right?
Bye, everybody.
The genuine pain.
Goodbye.
Oh, Reservoir.
Out you go.
Out you go.
Hey everyone, thanks again for listening to another Antiques, Freaks, and Terrible Book Club crossover. This episode was edited by Ken and scored by me, so a little tag team action for you there. We especially want to thank our patrons over here at Terrible Book Club, like our bad bookworms, Ben, Donnie, Emily, Jakub, Jared, Scott, and Will. Our exacting editors, Kieran, David, D, Emmy, Funny Robot with Antennas, Greg, Harry, 7, Martin, Root Beer Cutie, The Ugly One, Elliot, and Xander. Our loathsome librarians like Veronica, Beast with the Least, Yanka, Luchek, Patricia, Julius, and Of the Void, the taco-eating unicorn of the hot springs. And of course, our pesky publishers like Miles, Austin, Patrick, Fred, George, and our newest edition, Mitch. Thanks for joining up, Mitch. And of course, our Ko-fi donors like Mark, Tracy, our ever-faithful Kiwi Thing, Excavating Lizard, along with Martin F., Brenna, and Matthew, who relieved us of terrible books. If you want some terrible books we've read for the show, you can buy them over on our Ko-fi page. Thanks again for listening. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Terrible Book Club. Terrible Book Club is an independent podcast produced by your hosts, Paris and Chris. Sound design and audio editing by Chris, with sound effects and music by Epidemic Sound and sometimes also Chris. Our theme song is Kiss by Yearn, which is, you guessed it, actually also Chris. You can find more of his soothing synthy sounds on Bandcamp at yearn.bandcamp.com. Do you want us to review a book of your choice on the show? Do you want access to some extra audio-visual weirdness? If so, become a patron at patreon.com/terriblebookclub. If you'd like to send us a one-time tip instead, you can do that at ko-fi.com/terriblebookclub. You can also support TBC for free by sharing the show on social media, following our accounts on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or Goodreads, telling your friends about your favorite episode, or by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or anywhere else on the internet. To send us book recommendations or your adorable pet photos, send an email to terriblebookclub@gmail.com.